Hello everybody, Leah Harlann here. I know this is a little bit late, but I am finally getting around to doing the mid-year freakout tag. And I did recently give my model a little bit of a touch-up, so I hope you like it. And again, trying lots of different softwares, so if the movement is different, then that could be the main reason. But without any further ado, let's jump right in. So question number one, the best book I've read so far in 2024. This one's I am going to cheat a little bit with this one because there really is no other book that's come close to being as fun and that I've loved as much so far as this one, but I'm not actually done with this book yet, and that is Clear and Muddy Loss of Love by Qingjun Mo Xiao. I'm really sorry if I mispronounced that. The author's name actually translates to Please Don't Laugh, which I think is quite funny, and I also don't know how to pronounce the original Chinese title. So this is a baihe, or lesbian romance novel that has been translated from Chinese. It hasn't actually released yet officially. I believe you need to mark your calendars for March 2025, but I've been reading this with an ongoing book club online. It's been so much fun. We do a little bit of voice acting. So we all do like different voices and read different parts, and we have weekly meetings whenever possible where we read 10 chapters at a time. So it's been proceeding super consistently for a few months now, and we are going to be on track to finish it this year, which is kind of why I'm cheating just a little bit to let myself count it. But it really has been the best book I've been reading. If you think about it, when it's being published, it will be broken down into multiple volumes. So if we count it that I've already read the first few volumes of it, then it definitely counts. So I'm gonna count it. But if you want me to give you another example, I'll plug in a webtoon that I read entirely this year that I've also really enjoyed. One of the best ones I've read so far, and that is called When the Villainess is in Love there are multiple names credited, So Guijo, DCBO, Redgu, HJ, and Such, which is all caps, and LP. I'm not sure how many of them were part of the original web novel that it's adapted from. Probably just the first person. So Guijo is usually the author's the first name credited. Anyway, binged that one so fast. Loved it a lot. The extra stories were cute. It wasn't like a perfect best webtoon I've ever read ever, but definitely up there. Another one of those romanticities that I've talked about before that I really like reading in webtoon format. The next question, best sequel you've read so far in 2024. And I haven't actually read a bunch of sequels, so it was kind of slim pickings for this one. But I will say a super solid sequel and actually conclusion to a duology that I really enjoyed was Dark Star Burning, Ash Falls White by Amelie Wen Zhao. This was the sequel to Song of Silver, Flame Like Night, which came out last year. And I'm actually really, really upset because I missed my chance to get the Illumicrate special edition of Dark Star Burning. So if any of you happen to have a copy laying around that you're not really attached to, or if you know anyone that you could talk into selling their copy, please let me know. I am so bummed that I missed my chance with that one. Even the waitlist for the leftover stock, I never got an email. I'm so upset. Song of Silver and Dark Star Burning was a nice duology, in my opinion. It's Asian fantasy. It had a nice romance. It feels like it had some themes of colonization, but definitely not as dark or heavy or adult as something like The Poppy War. So if you want something a little lighter, I think I also made a TikTok, or I know I've mentioned this duology before because I did, like I said, complete it earlier this year. Next question. Number 3, new release you haven't read yet but want to. So this one was not as easy to answer as I thought it would be because I've been reading a good mix of new releases and backlist titles so far this year. And the books that I'm most excited for that release this year either haven't come out yet, they're coming out in the latter half of the year, or I went ahead and got to them actually. But there is one that I remember being pretty excited for and adding it to my TBR as soon as I saw it. And when I saw that I was going to get it in one of my book boxes, I was extra excited. I was like, oh, great, I'm going to have a copy of it right away on hand. No need to deal with long wait lists at the library. And yet I still have not picked it up yet. And that is Goddess of the River by Vaishnavi Patel. This is the same author who wrote Kaikeyi, which I read a couple of years ago, and I remember really liking her writing style and really enjoying the way that she chose to do a sort of mythological retelling. It was a little different from a lot of the other ones that I've seen and read lately. And I got a gorgeous copy from Illumicrate, and it was their May pick, but I opened it up, shot a cute video of it. Did I ever upload that video? Oh no. And then I usually post all my unboxings on TikTok, and I do know I'm behind on some of those because May and June were really backed up with Illumicrate. May came days after June because of delays in production. And I don't know if that really threw off my rhythm. But as a result, have not read it, have not picked it up again since unboxing it. I really should. I just finished another book. Maybe I can add it to my TBR though, an upcoming readathon. We'll see. Next question is most anticipated release for the second half of the year. And I've only mentioned it at every possible opportunity, but I'm still really excited and fingers crossed it still comes out this year. It's Heavenly Tyrant by Xiran Jay Zhao, the sequel to Iron Widow, one of my favorite books of all time. And despite all of the issues that have happened behind the scenes and on the publishing process, I haven't heard any updates from Zhao that it's been pushed yet again. So hopefully they get their big release right at the end of the year. I think late December is currently where it's scheduled to release. And I just, I don't know what I'll do if it gets delayed again. And I'm so looking forward to it. I don't even know if it's a duology, if this will be a conclusion or if there will be more to come afterwards. It could go either way. I'd be happy either way, probably. So yes, that's still my most anticipated release of the entire year. Still hasn't come out yet, but fingers crossed. Oh, next question was biggest disappointment of 2024. And I don't know if this is considered cheating because I did technically finish the arc that I had of it in late December, but I continued to talk about it and think about it all the way through its release. And I made, of course, my most watched video on this channel currently was a very long review of it, and it came out this year. So I'm gonna say that this counts and give it to To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods by Molly X. Chang. I can't even rehash in short form the problems I had with this book. It got a 2 stars, and you can go watch my video if you would like to see my full rundown of all of my thoughts and criticisms of it. There was, of course, a lot of drama surrounding it before and upon its release, mostly before. I haven't heard a peep of anything afterwards. I know she announced another book that she's writing. It is entirely separate from the sequel for To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods. Like, she's writing a different romantasy. And I remember, and I was like, no, thank you. I'm good. If her writing style doesn't change, I'm good no matter. I will pass on anything she writes. Although if anybody says, like, if those books come out and people are like, whoa, she got way better, like, things are so much better, I might revisit it. But at present, there was nothing in that book that left me wanting to come back. So the next question, number 6, the biggest surprise. I put a couple in here because they both coming at it from two different angles. So the first surprise is The Scarlet Alchemist by Kylie Lee Baker. I binged that book so quickly, and I'm very excited for the sequel, The Blood Orchid, which comes out later this year. And I actually have a digital arc for that one, so can't wait to get to it and see how that continues, because it was such a great ending, which just left me on the edge of my seat all the way up until the end. She kept me guessing, but in the best way. And the alchemy was super fascinating. Never really seen it done quite that way. And then the characters and their relationships were just so well done. So it kind of surprised me in that I picked it up on a whim. I just meant to try the first couple chapters, but then I just kept going. And then I read the whole thing in one day. So it was a surprise in that sense. And then the other surprise was a book that I was anticipating this year, and I thought it looked super interesting, and it paid off, but it surprised me in the way that it paid off. It surprised me in not just with how good it was, but I just was really surprised with the journey that such a short little novella could take me on, and how, despite knowing the sort of premise synopsis going in, it managed to surprise me in a lot of little ways. And that is A Magical Girl Retires by Park Sol-yeon. Yes, the translator was Anton Her. So love that one. It has some really nice little black and white illustrations in it as well. I'm fully intending to pick up a physical copy of it still. I just am on a bit of a book buying hiatus, except outside of my book boxes, of course. So I've had to hold off, but it's definitely going to be added to the collection at some point because it was such a good novella. And I think I've mentioned it in a previous review, but if you like magical girls, if you grew up with magical girls, some of the classics, Cardcaptor Sakura, Sailor Moon, you should definitely give this one a shot. It's just so interesting and it does like a magical realism thing. It was really good, and I'm glad I jumped into it. I hope to see more Korean works like this getting translated into English. I want to see more translated works in general because I'm trying to read more of those, but more like this for sure. And I haven't heard that many people talk about it either. Next question, favorite new author, whether it's a debut or new to me. And I'm kind of going to give two answers because the first one is my best read of 2024 so far by Qingjun Mo Xiao. That would make her my favorite author also. And it's not just from the perspective that this is the favorite thing I've read so far this year as a work, but also because I'm reading a fan translation, all of the author's notes from when they originally uploaded the chapters to the website that they were posting this work on, they were going chapter by chapter, Archive of Our Own, but in China. And so they had all these author's notes that they would put at the end of a lot of different chapters too. And they're just so great. It's so nice too. It gives you a little insight into the author as well during the writing process. And so I would say she's my favorite author. I hope that things like those author notes and comments aren't going to make it into any officially published version of it. And that's part of why I'm glad I'm reading this fan translation. But it also makes me interested in checking out more of her works in the future. And then for another answer, in case that one's considered cheating, I will say Kylie Lee Baker, the author of The Scarlet Alchemist, because I just really enjoyed that work. I really enjoyed the writing style. I found it very easily readable, and I will definitely be checking out other things by that author afterwards. So number 8, newest fictional crush. And I think I talked about this last year when I did that mid-year freakout tag. Did I ever do that mid-year freak? Oh my gosh, now I can't remember what videos I've ever even done. But if I didn't say it, I don't really have book crushes anymore. I don't, like, if I'm shipping pairings in books, it's usually like them with other characters. So I'm not really crushing on them as a person. But on the other hand, I have plenty of anime and video game crushes. And I would say that the visual medium of Webtoon has also worked very well for me having some crushes on Webtoon characters. So And especially I'm reading all of those romantasy works as well. So I went through a lot of the romantasies that I'm reading right now, and I would have to say that the character that I definitely am having a little bit of a crush on myself, not just skipping them with the character, is Seddon Ansarad. I think that's how you say his name. And he is a male lead in the webtoon S-Class Hunter Doesn't Want to Be a Villainous Princess. It's one of those with a really long name. And not only am I enjoying that webtoon immensely, but I love him. He deserves everything. Couldn't really think of any other fictional crushes from webtoons or books though. My crushes are usually in video games or anime. So if we were going to open up that question to everything, then I could have answered maybe. Moving on. Number 9, my newest favorite character in general. So I did have an answer. I was going to say, when I was scripting this video, I did have a character from Clear and Muddy Loss of Love picked out to answer this question. But as my book club members know, in a recent chapter or set of chapters that we read, so literally just within the last couple weeks, this character did such a 180 that I have completely abandoned her. And every week when we have our meeting and she comes up, she's like in the scene, I'm like, why'd she have to do that? Why'd she have to be like that? It was total character assassination. I'm so upset about it still. I will carry this for a while. I was rooting for you. I was rooting for you. We were all rooting for you. So she's not my favorite anymore. And instead, I will answer with a couple other characters that I have genuinely loved and thought about even after finishing the books. And that is Hester from A Sorceress Comes to Call. Another T. Kingfisher work that's coming out very soon and that I very much loved. And then Arcady from Dragonfall by L.R. Lamb. I read Dragonfall earlier this year, and the sequel comes out later this year. And Arcady is just such a fascinating protagonist. They were really interesting. It was a book that had a heist, so of course I am biased. They were a really great player of that kind of political intrigue game, but not like in the typical upper class courts or anything like that. They were playing their game out on the streets. They're like super interesting in both the things they've done in the past and the things they'll do to survive and to achieve their goals. Very highly motivated. And the tension they had with their romantic interest was just excellent. Honestly, there were so many things I loved about Arcady, and I really, really can't wait to read about them again in the next book. Hester is just fantastic. Hester, T. Kingfisher does a really good job writing older characters that are middle-aged or even a little further along, not just a bright, plucky young protagonist. T. Kingfisher has a very nice array of characters along the whole spectrum of ages, and this work definitely had a lot more characters that were on the older end, and I really enjoyed that. But I loved Hester in particular. It's a kind of historical setting, and she's just like, I'm a spinster, what about it? And she just had a really great sense of humor. She had a really wonderful dynamic with a lot of the other characters. Next question, book that made you cry. This one, I don't really have an answer for. None of the books that I've read this year have made me tear up, which is kind of unusual, actually. I could just be forgetting. My memory could be really poor, but I really can't think of any book that brought me to full-on tears this year. I don't think I've read that many that were super emotional, so that could be part of it, though. I think the one that got me feeling the most feelings, being the most up in my feelings, was The Hourglass Throne by Katie Edwards. It was the conclusion to the first trilogy of the tarot sequence, And so it was like the culmination of a lot of things, a lot of not just action and plot lines happening externally, but the character growth for some of our core cast members. So in St. John had a lot of very emotional moments, a lot of culminations. I don't know how else to put it without spoiling. So I definitely think that I was resonating with the emotional highs of that book the most, but it still didn't bring me to tears. So none of the books I've read have had that effect on me this year. Fingers crossed. I always like a good tearjerker. I always like a good novel or story that can get the waterworks going, though. The next question, number 11, book that made you happy. And this one is a very recent read, and that was The God in the Gumiho by Sophie Kim. It was super fun to read. It was another one that I knew I was getting it in an upcoming book box, and because I like to spoil those things for myself, I managed to get a digital ARC, which was super exciting, and I wanted to read it to see if I wanted a physical copy of the book, and it was so good, you guys. It was just so excellent. If you like K-dramas, you absolutely need to check out this book. I made my first ever fan cast after reading The God in the Gumiho, because it was just impossible. I've watched a fair number of K-dramas in my day, and there were certain faces that just were perfect fits in my head, and I needed to blab about it, so I made a TikTok about it. I don't make that many TikToks, but I made one just to talk about my fan cast choices for The God in the Gumiho. It was so much fun. It had, like I said, if you like K-dramas, you will like this, because it's like all of the fun, a little bit of the corniness, the cringiness that K-drama does sometimes with its romance, but its storytelling. It was so well paced. It had the highs and the lows. It was just so fun, though. It made me so happy to read about the dynamic between the main pairing. So that one was a great one. I did also enjoy A Sorceress Comes to Call. That one did make me happy. I said Hester was one of my new favorite characters. She was a delight to read from. Even the other main character, both POVs had great moments that made me elated. That's one of the better words to describe it. So it was a good one as well. Next question, the penultimate question. The most beautiful book you've bought so far this year or received. I really looked through all of my books, all of the special editions I've gotten this year, and I am so torn that this is my answer, because it was a DNF for me, but I can't deny that the Fairy Loot special edition of A Feather So Black by Lyra Celine is the prettiest book that I've received so far this year. I have held on to it because it's just so gorgeous. I could probably resell it if I want. I would definitely be able to resell it if I didn't want to keep it. But it's just so pretty. But I DNF'd it. I'm so sad. But I just, if nothing else, I am paying attention to artists that did work on that Fairy Loot special edition, because if I see their name on any upcoming Fairy Loot books, then I know it's gonna be a good one, because it was just so gorgeous. I like Fairy Loot. It's been pretty hit and miss with their books this year, but they've been gorgeous. The contents have been hit and miss, just like last year, but they are gorgeous. And then the last question for the mid-year book tag, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And oh my goodness, so many. I have so many books that I need to read. But just to give you the core list, a short list version of the absolute must-reads, first is The Stormlight Archive. Book 5 of Wind and Truth is coming out in December. I never finished book 3 or got to book 4. It's been several years since I read the first 2. I've been committed to doing a reread. And I think if I pace it correctly, I can do one a month. August, September, October, November, and then be caught up in time for the 5th book in December. I don't remember the exact date, if it's earlier or later in the month, but better safe than sorry. Let's plan for one a month. Other ones I need to read, The Oleander Sword, the sequel to The Jasmine Throne. I have it, I just need to read it, because book 3 of the Burning Kingdoms trilogy is coming out later this year. Another hotly anticipated book on my TBR, but I still need to read book 2. I didn't want to be stuck on a cliffhanger and stuck waiting for so long. So I had set it aside and then read other things instead. Another book 2 that I need to read before book 3 comes out is The Words of Kings and Prophets by Shauna Lawless. I read The Children of Gods and Fighting Men. Loved that one. Still trying to hunt down a copy of the Broken Binding special edition for that one as well. If anybody knows what kind of demon I need to make a blood pact with to get my hands on one of those. There were only 500 copies made, but I have book 2 from Broken Binding, and I have already pre-ordered book 3 from Broken Binding. So, which is The Land of the Living and the Dead, which will also be coming out, like I said, later this year. So I need to read 2 book 2s before book 3s come out. And then finally, on a slight tangent, slight pivot, after 10 years of waiting, Dragon Age the Veilguard, the video game, will be releasing. And I am so excited. Dragon Age is a core part of my personality. It's my favorite video game series of all time. Some of my favorite characters, some of my favorite story writing and plot and character writing of all time has come out of it. And for people who may or may not know, there is a lot of side materials made in the Dragon Age universe. There are comics and books, and there's like a Netflix animated series, and just all kinds of spin-off works and tangential works that flesh out, further build out the world of Thedas, the setting of the Dragon Age games. And so there has been actually quite a lot of material that released because it's been 10 years between the last game, Dragon Age Inquisition, and this upcoming game, The Veilguard. So I want to go back and reread all of that supplementary material that came out in the meantime. So not only is it a book of short stories called Tevinter Nights, as well as a few different comic series, but there were also quite a few short stories that a lot of the members of the writing team released over the years on Dragon Age Day and as a little special occasion crumbs for the fans just to keep us going. And knowing what I know now about the companions that are going to appear in the upcoming game, several of them have made appearances in a lot of this supplementary material, the comics, the short stories, the book. So I want to go back and reread all of it, brush up on what happened in Thedas between the last game and this upcoming one. I think that's it. That covers everything in the mid-year freakout tag. I also need to edit my quarter 2 reading log, reading wrap-up. Some of the books mentioned in this tag were read during that time. So I'll try to give slightly more expanded thoughts on those works in my reading wrap-up video instead. That's all for this video. So if you liked hearing my thoughts, or if you want to discuss any of the questions, give me answers to the questions yourself, discuss any of the books I mentioned in here, or webtoons, definitely feel free to drop a comment and subscribe. And if you don't know what to say, but you want to say hi, let me know you were here, drop any emoji you like. Or a dragon, because Dragon Age. And until next time, I hope you all read something wonderful and interesting. And I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.